school. In front of me were three young men with their jeans were so baggy that they had to hold it up with a hat. And as they were walking and cleaning the hallway without knowing it, I was walking behind them and taking in the sight. And one of them dropped a book, and then he had the audacity to bend down into the I saw places where the sun never shines. I was really embarrassed and turned away because I was not really prepared for anything like that. And when I entered the auditorium, I went up to the teacher who invited me, and I told him what just happened to me, and I pointed to the three young men with the baggy pants, and I told him, I am sure that they are bums and drug addicts. Because people who take drugs, they don't care about anything except their drugs, and they look sloppy. So the teacher told me, no, they are very good students, and to the best of my knowledge, they have never taken any drugs. So I realized that even I have to get to know the person and judge each person on their merits. And I finished my lecture and I asked for questions, and one girl stood up and said, Mrs. Kaur, I really would like to help you with your prejudice problem. What can I do for you? I said, I haven't thought about it, but let me try, and before I leave, I hope I have an answer, and I did. And this is what I told them. I'm going to take you all on a little imaginary trip. We are all going to carry a rock in our hand, standing on an imaginary bridge overlooking a very quiet imaginary lake. I take my rock, drop it into the water, and what you will see will be a river. All of you take your rocks and drop them into the water, and what you will see is the river touching the river. If we realize that every single thing we do in our daily lives touches the life of many people, just like a ripple in the lake. So all any of us have to do when we meet people, try to get to know them and judge them on their actions, on the content of their character, because that is ultimately the only thing that matters. And one person at a time, just like a ripple in the lake, we can make a difference in the big problem of prejudice. You can pass all the laws in the world and they do help, but prejudice starts in every human being's mind and heart, and it's the interaction between us people that really makes the difference. Lesson number 3, I have forgiven the Nazis, I have forgiven everybody, and the question really is, could you forgive people who have murdered your family and who were out to kill you? And if you couldn't forgive them, what can you do? You cannot change what happened. What is done is done. It's history. Well, in 1993, after my sister died, I was asked to lecture in Boston, and as a result of that request, they wanted me to bring a Nazi doctor to the conference. And I said to the professor, where on earth do you think I can find a Nazi doctor? He said, they are not advertising in the news. So he said to me, think about it, maybe you come up with some kind of an idea, and I did. I remember that the last project that Miriam and I worked on was a documentary done in 91 and 92. There was a Nazi doctor interviewed in that documentary. So I immediately faxed a letter to Germany telling them that Miriam died, and would they please give me this Nazi doctor's telephone number in the memory of Miriam, as they did. I called a friend who speaks German, because my mother tongue is Hungarian, but I don't speak much Hungarian either. It's been 50-some years since I spoke Hungarian. And he called me back the next day to tell me that Dr. Munch is not going to come to Boston, but he's willing to meet with me at his house in Germany. And in July of 1993, I was heading to Germany to meet a Nazi doctor. I was very scared. Actually, 2 days before departure, I could not close my eyes. Every nerve in my body was rebelling against what I was going to do. But I was very curious, hoping that I could find some details about our experiments. I was curious why was this Nazi doctor going to meet with me. I arrived at his house. He treated me with the utmost respect and caring and consideration. And as a result of that, he made me feel very comfortable in his company. And I asked Dr. Munch, I said, by any chance, Dr. Munch, he was not my doctor, by the way. I didn't know him much. Do you know anything about the operation of the gas tank? And he said to me, this is the nightmare that I live with every single day of my life, and then on describing the operation of the gas tank. The gas or the shower rooms were immaculate, were polished, were gleaming clean and smelled good. The Zyklon B or the gas did not come from the shower head, it came from a vent-like opening in the ceiling. It looked like pellets of gravel that were dropped from the ceiling and fell to the floor. It operated like dry ice. So the gas was actually rising from the floor. People would try to get away from the rising gas, climbing on top of one another, ending up as a pile of human beings. When the people on the top of the pile stopped moving, Dr. Munch, who was watching from outside through a peephole, knew that everybody was dead and signed the death certificate. There were any names, just 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people. I told him this was extremely important information. I never heard about it. That I wanted him to come with me to Auschwitz in 1995 and sign a document just what he told me. So if anybody among the revisionists say that there was no Holocaust, that there were no murdered people, that there were no gas chambers, I could take his document and show it in their face.